So hello again, everyone. Now, after the shows, we can discuss a bit what we have just seen and experienced, and maybe ask some questions to Stella herself and the other participants that were part of this whole progress. So the first question would go to Stella. We've just experienced 7 very different pieces, 7 different emotions, different themes as well. But you somehow made it happen and gel together and made them progress their work, helped them create their work as well. Can you tell us a bit about the whole progress, how you worked with the actors, how you helped them create their monologues, their one-person show?
Well, they came with an idea for something they wanted to explore. And some of the ideas were more developed than others. Some came with a seed, some came with a seedling. And they wrote, and I heard, and we showed, and we edited. And what's really, really interesting, and I think you might have discovered this if you had a chance to read some of what's written out there, because that really is our written process, that links started to emerge. Feelings of displacement, broken hearts, alienation, aloneness, loneliness, bullying, fraud. And it was just very interesting how, well, why shouldn't it be anyway? We're all in the one world and we're all experiencing similar things no matter where we live. London, England, America, Malta. And they worked individually. And then I ran around like a maniac to see what was happening. And some of the work started one way, went another way, and then came back. So there were no limitations, no editing, no censorship. That was one of the first questions I asked actually, was, I respect that each country has its values. And were there any taboo topics? Because right now, believe it or not, in America there's a lot of taboo topics. And what I was told made me so happy. It was no, just that actors had to be responsible for what they put out there. And I loved it. And what shone through over and over was personal integrity, love for the work, the respect for each other. These are really different performers. Very different. We're very different people. It didn't matter. And I'm just overwhelmed tonight, because they didn't miss a mark of what they proposed their next step to be. I know, in New York they say, cut to the chase, Stella. So you can say it too.
Maybe from what you just have said, maybe we have Elaine here, so I can ask her, why did Teatru Malta actually choose one-person shows? Why not another type of workshop?
Mm-hmm. So, first of all, this is part of a yearly program, which is the Klassi, tas-Surmast, play on words, or the Maltese interpretation of the masterclass series. And we wanted to focus on this year. We wanted to focus on monologues for the very simple reason that it is a kind of work which is very popular when you go to the Edinburgh Fringe. It is what you see over and over, and that is from where I think the actual idea sort of kicked off for this, and we wanted to try it out. We wanted to give the opportunity to actors, to performers who wanted to delve into this world, and we were lucky enough to have Stella with us. She was actually proposed from the Arts Council, so we kind of merged the two ideas together, and that's how we got to.
It was just organic.
This, it just happened, and I think the idea is that of kind of starting this off, so giving the opportunity of a 2-week residency to the performers that were chosen for this program, to give some time, to give the space to start this off. So the idea is not that this is the final phase of a project like we do for other projects, but to really start this, to introduce these performers, the ideas, the stories which they have to tell to the audience and to programmers, and hopefully take it from there. So it's either going to be us or another, or a venue or another festival that maybe takes this on board, obviously depending on what the performers now want to do with their work. So that was the idea, and that's why we're here.
I just want to say something. First of all, I want to give a really big thank you to Romina Delia, because she's the first person I ever spoke to about this idea, and felt very encouraged. Thank you. Look, both my parents are Maltese, and they migrated to Australia after the war. And I grew up there. I was born there. I grew up there. And there was a lot of racism when I was growing up. If you didn't have a last name like Smith or something like that, you know, you were a wog or a dago. And being an actor in that environment, it wasn't that easy to get work. I was too ethnic sometimes. So I met a writer, and he said to me, "You've got so many stories to tell." And we sat down with a bottle of wine every Thursday, and I told stories, and we came up with a one-woman show called "What Are You Doing Here Anyway?" Because when my uncle left Malta and worked on the cranes as a crane driver on the wharfs in Melbourne, Victoria, he was the best at it. And people got jealous and said, "What are you doing here anyway?" And I thought that was a good title for my show. 1,100 performances afterward. Because if you do something that reaches people, if you do something that's not too expensive to produce, if you can tour it, I toured it in the back of my car. Now, I don't drive in the States. I can tour in hand luggage. And so can all of them. And that was my idea, you know, to develop something to never be out of work, because I'm from the Actors Studio and I learn a lot there. And one of the things that was said is you may be out of work, but there's never a reason not to be creative. So I was creative, not knowing where this was going to go. I've got 8 one-woman shows, and I'm lucky enough to be working commercially as well in the States. But I never want to be not working, and you know, if you talk about being in big proscenium arch theatres, maybe you're not always going to be there. But last year, when I was here, and I went to see Nasaba, and it was in a homing club in Senglia. And the guy did a one-man show on how his relationship with his father developed through their love of Nasaba in a homing club, packed with people listening and identifying and growing, and it was magnificent. And the more I come here, and like I said, it's my 6th time, I see the most wonderful places that are venues where things can happen, where people can come if the work's good enough, if it's from the heart. It doesn't have to have a fancy set and costumes. And so that's what I've been trying to say and teach and drum into people's heads here, that you've all got quality stuff and specific audiences that you can do it to.
Maybe now we can take some questions or comments, or any comments from
To the actors too,
as well.
please. And if you don't put your hands up, I'm going to point. Oh. Like I'm going to point right now to Paul. And you can say, Le, Manrich.
So thank you for a wonderful evening. And I do have a question directly for the actor. Does anyone have any intention of, do you know how you would like this to develop? Do you have a plan for what? Any idea?